and they can be an amazing awakening, and that which can be very, very valuable. And it is emotional because actually participants learn about themselves when they journal what they do, right? So I think, I actually think it's absolutely emotional.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Chris Parker. You know, it's been a few weeks off, life's gone the way, and I'm really great to be back. I've got about 3 episodes in the can ready to go, and I am so excited to start off with Eugene Murphy. Eugene Murphy is CEO of mobile ethnography platform Indeemo. If you've not heard of Indeemo, it is absolutely fantastic. It's made my life incredible as a UX researcher about understanding people, because we all know we have to understand people. We all know that interviews have a limit. You got to go out there and do something a bit more to dig deep and really get at the deeper emotions of your users, not just what they say, but actually what they do. Diary studies and ethnography has always been a fantastic way of doing it, but it's always been challenging. And we've always gone, you know what, is it actually reliable? Because we're giving them these big diary packs, big stamps to stick onto what they're doing. Is that really getting to what they're really doing? Because it's fake. Now, Indeemo, mobile platform for capturing user insights, uses that tool which your users live and breathe on a mobile phone. So it promises to revolutionize the industry. And if you are the kind of person that wants to understand your users, you're going to get so much out of this episode. Now, Eugene describes himself as a lucky husband, proud dad, persistent optimist, on a mission to empower researchers, designers, and insights teams to empathize with the everyday, contextual needs, journeys, and experiences that really matter to their users and customers. So sit back and listen to our great conversation about the future of ethnography, how technology can revolutionize what we're doing as UX design researchers.
Great to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the podcast. So Eugene, can you tell everyone what Indeemo is?
What is Indeemo? That's a great question. So I guess it's many things to many people, right? So, and, you know, if we're getting literal, you know, it's a mobile ethnography platform. It, you know, some people use it for diary studies. I guess where we're at in its evolution right now is it's a way for a researcher to have a private connection with the user, the customer, the participant, so that the participant, the user, can share what's really going on in their lives over a period of time in a private way, right? So our North Star is to connect you privately with the person you need to understand, so they can show you what they're doing when they're doing it in their everyday context. Okay, so if we're to position that, we say, look, we're a mobile ethnography platform, you know, mobile diary. So what do we support? Actually, let's come at it in another way. So we support everything from exploratory, open-ended, week in the life diary studies. Okay, so that could be qual kind of strategic research. It could be week in life diary studies for user researchers. We do a lot of what qual researchers would call pre-tasking. So I'm going to do a focus group or user interview or an IDI next week. I'd like to get to know this person before I meet them. So we tend to play very nice as a pre-task to an interview. Okay. We have mobile screen recording, which has kind of morphed us into a little bit mobile usability testing. But laterally, what we're doing is we're helping researchers understand journeys. Okay. And it's a human journey. So it could be a shopper or a user or a customer. But essentially, what does this person do from the point where they do a Google search to think about my product to the point where they're an existing customer giving me feedback? Okay, so I guess our new positioning really is we help you understand human needs, human behaviors, human journeys, and human experiences. We probably put that under a mobile ethnography umbrella. Hopefully that makes sense.
So that's all the benefits that we can get from Indeemo. So I'm a designer and a researcher, and I want to do a project where I'm understanding, let's think of an example. Actually, can you think of an example of a typical project that your clients might be working on?
Look, it's massively varied because we've so many different customer personas, right? So let's say you're a qual researcher, you're trying to understand the consumption of beverages over a week, right? So what you'll do in that study is you'll recruit a respondent or a participant. They will be brought into the project using our app. Okay, they might start with a selfie video where they introduce themselves and talk about their general consumption of drinks. They may take a video of what's in their fridge to show you what drinks they have right now, and then they'll keep a diary of what they drink at every beverage occasion over a week. You may send them shopping. They'll go in store, they'll record some video in store, they'll come back and they'll consume the product. So that would be a consumer journey. A user journey might be, the first time somebody uses Deliveroo. Okay, so they'll be recruited in as a non-user of Deliveroo or Uber Eats. They'll be given a selfie video to talk about, the status quo. So what do you use when you're not using our app? And then we'll get them to do a screen recording of the first time using Deliveroo. It might focus in on search, for example. And then there might be another task where you get them to order. So we'll screen record how they order the food. What's very powerful then is because we're sort of omni-channel, it's not just about usability. After the food is ordered and you've got that screen recording, we can then get them to take a video immediately after they get the food from the rider. So they're talking about the delivery experience. They may take a photograph of the food to show you the quality of the presentation, the out-of-the-box experience. They'll taste it and then they'll record a video giving their overall feedback. So I guess what is that? That is the human journey of somebody who's thinking about, downloading an app and using it to the point where they're actually using it and giving you feedback. And I think that the commonality across all of our projects and every bit of research we support is the smartphone device is, we're sleeping with the bloody thing, right? So I think, we're waking with it. It's your alarm clock. So this device is the thing that gets any researcher closest to the person they need to understand throughout a period of time. So we're essentially using the smartphone as a periscope into the everyday realities of the people you need to understand.
Now, I'm old enough to remember my days as a research associate, and we were going out there buying disposable cameras, printing out physical diaries, designing little pieces to go with it, handing these packs over to people and saying, before you leave home, could you do this? Could you stick this on your fridge? And when you go to the fridge, do this? Or in one case, I was strapping a camera to my kayak, going down the river in Wales and sinking, and taking photos as I was going. That's traditional ethnography that, thousands of PhDs and thousands of journal papers have been based on. How does Indeemo compare to that established way of working?
Look, I think it's the digital evolution of it, really, isn't it? So like that metaphor of sending out the disposable camera, I'm old enough to remember that as well, right? So I think the logistics involved, you know what I mean? So that was work, that was extra effort for that participant at that time to remember to kind of diary what they were doing for you. Okay. Why mobile ethnography now? Why digital ethnography now? Because we're digitizing life through our mobile phones. Okay. So I think now basically the smartphone is a connected camera. It's 4G, 5G data. That's all you can eat. So if the transition between the disposable camera, so you gave them a disposable camera and then they went off piste for a week and you have no idea what's going on as a researcher. So you're waiting for this to come back in and then it's like a reveal a week later. What did they do, right? Because the camera is now connected and it's interactive and it's social almost. When they're on that kayak and they upload that video, with Indeemo, you're sitting at a dashboard that looks like Pinterest, but looks like a private or works like a private one-to-one Facebook. So you watch the video as soon as they post it. And if you've got a question then, you ask the question, you comment on their dashboard, they get a push notification, they swipe, and then they message you back. So I guess we describe Indeemo as a bit like the love child of a private one-to-one Facebook and Pinterest. It's very, very visual and multimedia enriched like Pinterest, but it's interactive like a private Facebook. So not only do you capture context, but you can connect and interact and comment and probe with this participant throughout the course of that week or whatever that period of time. So for a researcher, that's magical because now you get to ask that burning question in the moment. So Indeemo is literally a play on in the moment. Really, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get you closer to that person without being in their space, so they can bring you along with them on whatever journey they're going on, and you can almost be virtually part of that journey and experience what they experience.
Mm. There's that saying in physics that as soon as you observe something, you change it. And I got a sense that maybe that could be true here. What's your thoughts?
In what respect? Sorry, can you clarify that a little bit more?
Well, if I'm running my study and I'm looking at, how many soda drinks people drink in a week, or I'm looking at their eating habits and snacking habits, okay, and they send a picture of their cupboard and it's full of chocolate. Then the next picture I see, it's empty of chocolate. And I jump in and send a message saying, hey, can you tell me what you're thinking now? Or can you tell me what your thoughts are now? Mm. Do you think that me asking them that question in that moment could change their behavior or thoughts?
Look, it's not for me to say, right? You want to talk to a social scientist, I'm sure, to get into that one, right? So who knows, right? Who knows? I guess the way we'd answer that is, what was the status quo before? So before, you're standing in the kitchen looking at the cupboard, right? So you're certainly going to change behavior when you're with them, right? I think, let me answer that through data. So what our customers tell us is that it's just non-invasive, right? So that you're not in the room. And the other thing that's consistent, especially in healthcare research, is that the respondents, once they gain your trust and once you get into day 2, 3, 4 of a study, is that they forget that you're in the room. And they're certainly more comfortable talking to themselves in a selfie video than they might ever be face-to-face with you in their space. And they become almost confessional. So I think what we're hearing consistently is that you're getting a different perspective of the research participant. And it's not A or B. This is not a zero-sum game that digital, trumps in person. I actually completely disagree. I think it augments in-person research, right? And if anything, it scales a researcher. So what you can do, researchers are very busy. We're all locked up at the moment, right? But like the Rolls-Royce solution is that you get 20 participants to do some sort of a study with Indeemo, whether it's a diary study or mobile ethnography. You get to know them, and by getting to know them, you get to figure out who the real customer persona is. You'll have 2 or 3 that you really must engage. And Indeemo is almost a funnel in where you can pick those 3 and go meet them face to face and essentially go deeper, whether that's in a Zoom call or whether you go and visit them physically, right? I hope, which we will be doing soon again, right? So I would say that theoretical question, does it change their behavior? I'm not sure. I'm not the best person to answer that. But as I don't think there's a perfect form of research, but I think this certainly gets you closer to what's actually happening. And by the way, in the metaphor of that chocolate was in the cupboard and now it's not, if you're in person with them for 2 or 3 hours, your time slot for understanding that respondent is just a snapshot of 3 hours. Okay, so you're kind of working very hard to infer what's really going on, and there's only so much they can show you. And by the way, it's probably in a single context. When you do this research asynchronously with us, you're in multiple contexts, and you're still getting 3 hours of interaction, but it's spread out over 7 days. So it's a much more longitudinal. It's almost like leaving the shutter of the camera open for a longer period of time, right? So they'll show you something on Monday morning, and then you'll get it at lunchtime, and then you see something on Monday afternoon, then there's Tuesday, and suddenly you're building up a more holistic understanding what's really going on. And, the beauty of this, I think, is when you start to see repetitive behaviors, you can then trust the data. There's always a question of, when I met them for 2 or 3 hours or I spoke to them for 90 minutes, is what they're telling me really what's going on? Okay, so you and me we're talking right now, and you can see the office in the background here, and I can see your background. My canvas for your life is a couple of diplomas and degrees on the wall, and so this is your context. I don't know you, but if you're on a mobile camera and you're walking around with Indeemo in your pocket for 7 days, I see you in your kitchen, I see you at work, I see you shopping. So we're roving. It's actually like a roving ethnographer over a period of time, where they're bringing you into multiple contexts and you get to know them. And you're getting more time to live with them to really figure them out.
Mm. So when I'm doing my research and I'm trying to get these deep insights into people, of course, ethnography and diary studies is a very rich part of that. But I'm also doing interviews. I'm doing card sorting. I might do role play and a whole load of other design activities to just get into the mindset of the person. Can Indeemo replace all of that? Or is it a complementary tool?
I think currently it's one tool, right? I think, so the fast answer is not currently. Okay, so card sorting and all these techniques. So getting technical, we're an asynchronous qualitative research solution. Okay. And I actually, so my framework for all this, I think, as a researcher, you almost have a stack, an understanding stack, an insight stack. Okay. And any business will. So they'll have analytics, they'll have big data, they may have point of sale, they'll have surveys, they'll have segmentations. So the more different types of data you can start to layer on top of each other, the deeper the understanding, right? So what we are right now is we're kind of asynchronous qualitative research solution, which is longitudinally carried out. That's basically capturing video or images or text-based data over the period of time. So there's no card sorting. We don't have a Zoom-like capability currently. It is on the roadmap. I think for now it's that asynchronous approach that kind of lets you hang out with them for a while.
Excellent. Now, obviously, I know the value of ethnography from my own personal research, and Eugene, you clearly know the value of ethnography. But for anyone listening who doesn't really understand ethnography or why it's so important to understanding people, could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a fascinating question. So I think basically, it's, if you're to distill it down into one word, it's probably context, right? And it's a way to understand kind of human behavior in context, or human needs in context, or human experiences in context, right? So I think, I'm not an ethnographer by any means, so I'm sure there's lots of listeners here who will be able to speak to this more technically than I will, right? But basically, it's a powerful way for you to kind of walk in the shoes of the people you need to understand over a period of time, so they can show you their world from their perspective, right? And different techniques out there. So I almost think about richness, right? So so you do a survey. I surveyed 1,000 users and 72% say X, right? So you're looking at a pie chart and you're saying, okay, so there's a signal here, but you're not even really able to connect with the data, okay? And it's quite two-dimensional, right? So surveys and analytics, they're quite two-dimensional, right? So, and this goes back to my insight stack type framework. So then you might say, let's go talk to some of them face-to-face. So I'll do a Zoom for 90 minutes and I'll have a great conversation with you. And then, I'll do 5 or 6 or 10 Zooms or whatever. And now you start to get a signal. You've spoken to them, right? And now it gets richer. I think what ethnography does then basically is it's almost what's happening off camera. It's what's happening in the background. It's over a period of time. So the classic example is, if you go into consumer, it's a shop along, right? So you might have a researcher follow you around Walmart and they look at where you reach on the shelf and they do all these things. So it's the observation of behaviors, subconscious behaviors, I guess, to kind of understand needs and ideally unmet needs, right? For somebody who's never done it before and doesn't know what ethnography is, it's basically you as a researcher trying to understand how people live, how people work, how people shop. And it's not what they say they do, it's actually what they show you they do. So I think the difference, if you're to distill it down now and I'm thinking about it, is don't tell me, show me. With ethnography, you get to see it because it's activity based, and you get to observe how they act versus then listen to what they say.
Excellent. And I think I totally agree with that be able to see what people do is always so different to what they say they do. I mean, how many people would admit to eating the whole bar of chocolate from the cupboard because they're feeling just stressed? They're probably going to say they nibble, but reality we see different. So Eugene, you said before that you're not an ethnographer by background. So how did you get started with Indeemo?
Oh, this is a crazy story. So, so let me go all the way back, I guess, right? So I'm a civil engineer by degree, right? So that was quite a journey. So I did civil engineering, and let me tell you the whole story, I guess. So in the last year of university, I was just doing interviews. I said I better figure out how to do interviews, right? And go do the rounds and all the rest. So I filled out an application form for a UK investment bank that just happened to be in the university at the time, a bank called Salomon Brothers. Sent it off, said I'd do some interview practice. About 6 days later, they were in university interviewing, did 2 interviews. It was great. A week later, I was in London for 2 days of assessment centre, and 3 weeks later, I had a job offer to go work in investment bank in London as a business analyst. So, I did a bit of Googling, and it was obviously a pretty impressive investment bank. So I said I'd give this business analysis thing a try. So I kind of spun around the bank. I did a graduate program, did some systems administration, worked on the trade floor. Essentially kind of got in from business analysis into project management and then into product management. Okay, so we left the bank, the big bank. It got taken over by Citigroup at the time, so it went from 6,000 to 160,000 or whatever the number was. Went to work with a startup at JP Morgan spin-out called Market Access as a product manager, and did a couple of years building a Eurobond trading platform from scratch, basically, to allow investment banks and brokers to transact digitally. So that was an amazing experience. Came back to Ireland, set up a business in architecture, actually, so went designing houses for 6 to 7 years, and in that time, obviously got married and had 4 kids, 4 wonderful little kids. And what I realized is that their lives were being kind of digitized through Caroline sharing moments. So I get videos, messages, pictures of everything the kids were doing over a period of time. So your Twitter, your WhatsApp stream is probably essentially the shared journal of your life, right? So, and I had this kind of real need to kind of journal their moments and tell their stories. So as a parent, they were growing up too fast, right in front of my eyes, and like, wow, I want to be the keeper of their memories, so I can play back to them how awesome they were, in the first 5 years of their lives. So my big startup idea was to go and create a digital diary for new families, to kind of create a way for them to privately share moments, not on Facebook, not publicly, and secure private sharing of real life moments, and essentially use the act of sharing as a life journal. So that was the whole thing. Went off, did my startup, raised some money, and we called it Tweakaboo. So essentially it was Facebook for families meets a baby journal on the back end. So awesome product, right? So the families loved it. Essentially what we're doing is you're digitizing life and real life moments when they're happening, and you're sharing them with families, and you're creating this kind of journal of essentially a life story, right? Fast forward, really awesome product, very lousy business. So we couldn't really scale it. Anyway, they tried to do B2C, B2B play and a few things, long story short. So anyway, so the product was awesome and the business wasn't great. And a very challenging 2015 where the writing was on the wall that I needed to go get a real job, basically, right? And I got a random email from an ethnographer who somehow stumbled across our baby journal on steroids on the internet and said that they were looking for a tool to do ethnographic research. And as far as they could tell, this was the best technology they'd seen on the internet, right? True story. So I'm sitting in the office about to pull down the shutters in the business. I jumped on a Skype call, and about 45 minutes later, massive light bulb moment went off. That we had this awesome technology that was essentially great at capturing real life moments. We just had it in the wrong space, and did a fairly sharp pivot of the business. And 6 8 weeks later, we're into a pilot with that client, and they were just blown away. So that was it, right? So, and I think that context is important because we're newbies here and we're learning as we go. So it's not like I've got 20 years of academic cred behind me where I'm building my own pipe dream. I'm literally building something that the customers are telling me they need. So our superpower really was we essentially brought a social networking style technology into insights and research, and we're just connecting researchers with these research participants in a way that's just natural and normal now, right? So everybody's sharing, everybody's messaging. And I think the metaphor is we kind of tap now before we talk. We probably TikTok before we talk. So we're kind of, I feel like we've kind of crashed, turned up at a hotel and went to the wrong wedding sometimes, right? You know what I mean? It's like, but but we've come in and we're wonderfully naive about the space. We're constantly learning about the researchers' needs. And we've got this really intuitive, modern, mobile-first social networking style technology now that's just simple and awesomely powerful at capturing kind of real life with very little friction. So that's how we came to be, and that was 2016. We've been at it for 5 or 6 years now. We've done thousands and thousands of projects, and I think we're still learning.
That's really interesting to hear that it evolved from that really emotion-centered project into something which I would assume that Indeemo was this quite dry, design-centered, like we need to make this product because here's the need, rather than it evolving in such a wonderful way. In the 5 years that you've been doing Indeemo, have you seen the market change or what people are requesting for the tool? Or has it remained quite consistent from that first brief?
So we did if you go to our website, Indeemo.com, and go to the About Us page, there's a video there, right? So we kind of launched a video there maybe 2 months ago, right? But the start of the video is, change is constant, right? And the rate of change is accelerating generally, right? And we're in the middle of a digital meteorite right now. So like for me, right, I think if you're trying to visualize the impact of COVID on business and everything, it's almost like this digital pulse. You see it in the movies, right? Like goes off, it's like a digital bomb. You can see the wave going down the street. And the wave going down the street means that when we go back to the high street, shops will never reopen again, right? Boohoo just bought Debenhams. Like, so if you're looking for a metaphor, for what we're in the last 12 months, it's like, Mark Andreessen is saying for the last 10 years, the software is going to eat the world. A digital retailer just ate the high street, right? So I think, so in that context, absolutely seeing a massive shift. And if you go back to the history of our business, the average project in 2016 was trying to understand what was in your fridge. The average project in 2017 was probably how are people shopping? What is this omni-channel thing? We were doing it way back when. 2018, 2019 was around journey-based stuff, and then 2020's just exploded, right? So I think, to put in context, I think every business is going to have a digital interface. Obviously, will have to, right? Every experience, whether it's healthcare or retail or software, is going to be omni-channel. So you will interface digitally with a doctor who will probably screen you on video, and if they need to escalate, they'll bring you to a clinic, right? So with that context, where we are right now is I think we're in the digitization of everything, right? And the digitization of everything is probably the primary interface right now is a smartphone, because for the same reason it's pretty much attached to us. So look at what's happened in the last 12 months. If you reflect on your life, so what behaviors have changed? We're shopping online, stuff's getting delivered to the door. It's just incredible. So I think, that's a very long-winded answer, but it's been extraordinary, the rate of change, and it's certainly accelerated in the last 12 months. And why we're here actually is I think we've morphed from traditional qual research into design research. Okay, and what we think actually, so if you go to our homepage now, we think it's experience research, right? So I think, if we distill everything we do now and all this research we support, we're kind of helping researchers understand human experiences, whether they're in store, at home, or online. Okay, so it's just an extraordinary time, isn't it? And I think for UX and service design and customer experience professionals, it's all kind of morphing together now. And the need to kind of figure out these kind of real world and digital experiences is just never been more urgent.
Now, forgive me if my memory is not quite right on this part, but you said that you've gone from design research to experience research. What do you mean by that? What's the difference between the two?
I don't think, experience research is just a kind of our phrase now, to be honest, right? So I think, so we're getting into the experience economy. So if you pair it back, right? So again, this is kind of my philosophy, and it might be a little bit off piste for the podcast. But if you look at Warren Buffett and you listen to Warren Buffett, right, and you say, what companies does he invest in? He invests in the companies that have great customer experiences. So he's investment for the richest investor on the planet. He's North Star when he's making investment. Is he investing in businesses that have great customer experiences, right? And if I kind of boil down business, right, really boil it down to its barest bones, it's it's a business offering a product or a service that's solving a need for somebody else. It's an exchange of cash for need, right? And as we become digital, I guess as business goes on, right? So let me tell you, go back to experience design. So there's two cafes side by side on the high street, okay? And you look at service design. The one you go into, which has the same coffee at the same price, why do you go into that cafe? Because the customer experience is better, okay? So I think when businesses understand their customers properly or as best they can, and really kind of are tuned in to the needs of the customer, you'll create a better product. You'll create a better experience, and that's your defensibility going forward, right? So I think ultimately it's down to what is my customer experience. Every business is trying to make that better, and every piece of research you do in the business is essentially trying to get to that end goal. So that's why I think human experience research is probably the superset of what we do. Look, it's design research, it's UX research, it's qual research, it's consumer research, it's it's many things, but at the North Star is like, what's this experience of this human being, and how can I make it better?
Now, an experience obviously happens in the person's, in their mind, in their body. It's something you feel, and it can be quite hard to describe. So, talking about coffee shops, I remember the last time I was in New York, walking into this really awesome micro roastery. I think it's like 33rd Street, I believe, just off Broadway. Anyone in New York listening will probably think I'm talking crazy because I just described some weird place. Anyway, I walked in there and it was everything I could hope for. Like, you imagine that New York cafe experience with the colours and the smells and the food they're serving and the donuts, everything there, and I can describe it. I don't know how to communicate why I like it so much. Maybe the tone of my voice is a bit, but taking photos, I think you'd be hard pressed to really point the difference between that awesome roastery I had and Starbucks. So with the Indeemo tool, I'm collecting all this data and getting all these pieces. How can we determine those awesome experience moments from those generally good experience moments?
Yeah, I think it's a feeling, right? So when you nail your customer experience, what you're really passing on is a feeling, right? So I think it's an emotional thing, right? So, and it's multi-sensory, right? So I think, the picture in isolation, it tells a story, but I think video is the real capturer of context, right? So video is where the emotion comes to life. So, what we do is I'm standing in the roastery on 33rd Street. They're grinding coffee in the background. The smell is awesome. The waiter just gave us an amazing thing. And, this place rocks and the Wi-Fi is great. And I just love coming in here because you know what? It's like a little vacation from my day at work. Okay. Now, the little vacation from my day at work is probably what a brand strategist is mining for. And they're going, oh my God, it's like, go have a coffee and have a 5-minute vacation. That's the magic sauce right now. So what are we doing? So if you think about the physics of research, right? So here's my kind of framework, my outsiders framework. It's like, and let's say focus groups, right? So let's say the old way of doing qual is focus. Let's get a bunch of strangers into a central location, which is far away from their everyday context, and have a conversation in a group dynamic about something that probably happened last week. Right. So that's fine for getting group dynamics. And I'm certainly not going to rubbish them. I think that's absolutely powerful for certain use cases. Right. But essentially, I'm in front of strangers who I've just met. I'm not in my everyday context. And I'm probably talking about something that happened last week. So what they have is they've got memory, post-rationalization. They're probably not saying what they really think. And they're out of context. So that's in consumer research, that was the old way of doing it. So mobile ethnography and our digital ethnography so we're coming down the 3 different axes. So from a time perspective, focus groups talked about last week, mobile ethnography, we're recording the now. So we're at the 00 coordinate of time. In a focus group, you're at a central location in front of a bunch of strangers. I'm standing in the cafe on 33rd Street and I'm recording the video now. So I'm in there, right? And essentially it's just me, well, you are in front of a bunch of strangers, but it's me telling you privately what my feeling is right now. So if you're trying to get the quest of authentic contextual data capture, a video of somebody recording how they're feeling when they're doing something in their everyday context is probably as close as you can get to authenticity. So I hope that answers the question. And let me bring that to life in healthcare. The metaphor of what that patient with a particular condition will record into a selfie video at 10 p.m. in the evening when they're sitting at the edge of their bed and the bedroom door is closed is something they'll never say to you face to face. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to give the researcher an ability, A, to connect, but B, to get closer to the context of the person they need to understand. And when you do that and then you do it repetitively over a week, you're starting to really trust the signal, because if the behaviors repeat, then you know you're onto something. And that's, I guess, that's some element of truth in terms of what the user needs or how they behave.
Okay. So if I was going into hospital having operation and you're following me with Indeemo, doing these things, can you tell me how this plays out, how you're actually working with me and getting my experiences?
Well, healthcare is very, very sensitive, right? And there's, we're HIPAA certified. There's a whole lot of regulations. Information security is obviously paramount, right? So, we're ISO 27001 certified. We're HIPAA certified. So we do a lot of sensitive research. We do a lot of research with healthcare providers recently. So I think, certainly the last quarter, it's a growing cohort of new inbound business, right? So a participant is recruited. They're incentivized to opt in. They're completely anonymized when they come into the software. So the researcher never really knows who they are. The recruiter does. And really, the patient, I guess, in the healthcare context is just, they're given a number of tasks to talk about different topics, or take a diary. Let's say you're talking about psoriasis, for example, just an example. So you'd probably get them to keep a diary of what they eat. Okay, so every meal is recorded, and then they're taking pictures of flare-ups of the condition over time longitudinally. So what they're doing is they're taking you on a journey, and they're keeping a diary of whatever it is that the researcher wants to understand. Very little is done in clinic, in hospital. It's usually at home. And increasingly, I guess, from a healthcare perspective, it's always remote now and contactless, right? A lot of healthcare research was done in traditional ethnography before you go meet somebody and spend some time with them. But that's not safe anymore. And I'm struggling to see a context where a researcher will be able to go meet somebody who's vulnerable from a COVID perspective for the next 12, 24 months, right? So the kind of surprise that we've had in the last 6 months is I guess, the contactless safety of using mobile ethnography for hard to reach and vulnerable audiences, right? And we've had some amazing feedback. I'd love to be able to talk about it. Obviously, we're under NDAs, but I think the impact of mobile ethnography in healthcare and pharmaceutical research is just going to be absolutely transformative. So, and you go back, just go back on my personal journey, I was very emotionally attached to preserving memories and helping, my kids tell their stories, right? That was a real driver for me. And, understanding Rice Krispies and what's in your breakfast cereal didn't have the same kind of emotional connection for me for a couple of years. But when I see healthcare now and I'm talking to the clients and the feedback they're giving me and the stories they're telling and the impact that our data is having on their understanding of what really matters to patients, it's just so important. So I just think we're going to have so much impact on people's lives because of this methodology. It's insane. It's just wonderful, actually. Yeah.
So, Eugene, I'm going to get back onto that idea you gave about psoriasis. So, I've got eczema, which is not quite the same as psoriasis. And unfortunately for me, it's on my hands. So, I've had times when I've had no fingerprints because of just skin problems. And I could go into lots of detail here, which I'm not going to burden you guys with. But I can collect data about what's happening with my condition. And I could say, my skin's cracked. Or I could say, the skin on my fingertips is cracked. That's very surface information. And I suppose what the researcher really wants to hear is, I am finding every day difficult because every day I'm trying to use my computer or type, I'm bleeding. And it's painful and it's emotionally distressing more than it's actually physically painful to see this happening, and I can't control it. I feel like I've tried everything on the market and nothing's available. I've given up hope. I've given up going to doctors. I feel they don't actually care because every time they tell me, just put moisturizer on, I've tried that. Nobody cares. Why should I bother? That's the much deeper insights. And there's levels beyond that. How can you encourage people to get those deep, difficult to express feelings out when their natural instinct might be to give surface level info?
Look, we don't get into the research so much, so we're providing the platform. So I'm kind of, I won't, like, I think it's the magic of moderation. I think it's the establishment of trust, right? So I think go back to my point about this being longitudinal. Okay, so it's not just a picture of a flare up or the cracked skin. If you do this over a period of a week or 2 weeks or a month, what you're doing is you're taking snapshots of moments. Okay, so it's look at it now. Boom, take the picture and you upload it. But actually, if you're doing a longitudinal study and you're understanding food consumption or some other thing, the researcher is able to join the dots because there's a timeline, right? So you're stretching out the time axis of the understanding, and it's not just a snapshot of moment in time. It's if I go back up the timeline, you had X, so X, you did X and it exacerbated Y. Okay, so I think so two answers to that question. One is because it's longitudinal, you get a bigger time window to understand, right? Okay, so it's not just a one data point, it's a timeline of data points. Okay, the second thing is it's trust, right? And trust comes from the methodology being one-to-one and private, the technology being secure and validated, and the interaction between a researcher and the patient over time, where rapport gets built. Okay, so, and it goes back to the point, it's like so there's, in a 1 week study, there's a lot of activity where people are trying to get up and running on the first 2 days. But it's usually when you get to day 3, 4, and 5 that people start to get comfortable and kind of revert to norm in a study. Okay, so I always feel like if you do a Zoom interview, right, or you do something, everybody's talking and it's all quite time compressed, and it's probably not very. I won't say it's not very authentic, but it is just a narrow window to make everything happen. When you stretch out the time axis on the study and you do it asynchronously, it's a bit more chilled out, less time pressure, and people can be themselves. And they will certainly, over time, as the researcher builds rapport with participants, they'll start to open up. So we routinely hear from our clients that respondents become almost confessional over time. I don't know what the magic of the moderators is on that, but we hear it often. And I think what it is, it's just this, it's just a private one-to-one conversation with nobody else in the room, right? And then I guess that's my best answer first. The other thing we do a lot of is we do a lot of kind of asynchronous videos. So we get the researchers typically to introduce themselves at the start of a study. So when you open up a study on Indeemo, the first thing you see is a video recorded, a selfie video of the researcher saying, "Hi, I'm Eugene. I'm going to be a researcher. I'm looking forward to getting to know you next week. And look, all I want you to do over next week, just be yourself and just get." So now there's a face to the name. It's, you're wearing a hoodie, you're not wearing a lab coat, you're a human being. And then basically rapport starts to build over time. I think that's it. I think it's more time to do the research, less pressure on data capture, a private space, a safe space, so that so I guess a rapport can be built and trust can be established.
I'd imagine that because Indeemo started out as that emotion-centric family, let's capture these magic moments of our children growing up. And I've got a 2-year-old son. Yesterday, we're looking at photos of him growing up from a few months old now, and you go, where's that guy gone? He's disappeared. So I really get that. So I can imagine that because it started out with emotion at the center, that's what's enabled it to be successful at capturing emotion in people's lives.
I think it is, right. And I think it's look, what's absolutely true, right? I think from the genesis of the startup to where it is today is we're establishing a private connection, and we're sharing real life moments, right? And it's like these are moments we're capturing. There is no filter. People say it's a bit like Instagram for Qual, right? And I guess it is the UX of it is probably like Instagram, but there are no filters on the camera here, right? So we're just trying to get you into somebody's truth over a period of time. And, interesting, right? So you said, where is he gone, right? But I think one technique that we do and we kind of suggest on all projects is to get the participants, as the very last thing they do in a study, to scroll back through their timeline on Indeemo and then reflect on the eureka of actually seeing these kind of everyday moments strung together into a timeline. So we're capturing moments and then we're moving on. Okay, and we're doing this moment by moment over a week or 2 weeks or whatever. But it's only when you go back and you scroll through your timeline, there's an amazing awakening in every study where you're going, wow, I never realized I drank so much coffee. I never realized I did this so much. So one of the techniques we do is this kind of reflective video where we ask the participants to, before we finish up, thank you very much, would you mind scrolling through your timeline and moments on Indeemo and just record one final reflection video and tell us what you've learned about yourself since you took part in the research. And there can be an amazing awakening, and that which can be very, very valuable. And it is emotional because actually participants learn about themselves when they journal what they do, right? So I think, I actually think it's absolutely emotional. And it's really, really interesting. I think, go back to your point about feelings. Great experiences are emotional, right? And they generate feelings. And I guess what we're trying to do is we're trying to capture real life emotion so that businesses can kind of provide better value, I guess, right? Better experiences.
Absolutely. I like what you said about being longitudinal over periods of time, because when I'm working with PhD students and trying to design these studies, which, you always think a PhD has been this great mountain of how can you do that? And look at their philosophy of what is research, how to do things, how it trickles down into choosing your methods and those bits. At some point you hit that time horizons part, like what's a cross-sectional about? And almost universally go, well, you can't do longitudinal, it's far too fast. Do single occurrence, and that's going to get you through this PhD. So being able to do longitudinal is potentially great. Do you think that Indeemo opens up longitudinal in a brand new way, or is it just adding to what was there originally?
Again, look, we haven't gone back into the academic toolkit, right? So I think if you, like, we deal a lot with academics, and we usually get kind of brought in for mixed method approaches. Okay, so we did a huge study with University College London on the impacts of COVID on families, right? So if you Google that, it's FACT, F-A-C-T, FACT COVID, and they used Indeemo basically to connect with multi-generational families, respondents of multiple demographics across multiple countries, and it was longitudinal. I think for them it was a huge enabler, right? So it can, because we still hear stories of paper diaries, and I guess the technology hasn't really caught up yet in academia. And I think we're facilitating it. I think we're making it a lot easier. It's probably always been done, but I think now it becomes more normal, more easier, and actually because of this kind of social networking DNA we have, it's much more interactive.
Okay, I want to think about the future now with you, Eugene. So you're saying about how digital is like a wave bursting down the high street, and then the digital is going to eat the high street completely. And it reminded me of a BBC News article which I've got saved on my computer from 2003, that maybe we should abandon this thing called online shopping. And it's just a silly phase. We've been there, done that. It's not real. And it was just this expert discussing why .com bubble burst and why it's just a fad. It was so wrong. And that's what I love about the article. In close on 20 years, we've seen the world change beyond recognition. And you said that change is constant. Then, Indeemo, you've seen a lot of change in your clients and requirements over the last 5 years. And you said there's things you're working on, like having Zoom-like functions integrated into the app. If we look forward in 20 years' time, what would you like Indeemo to be like?
Well, 20 years is crazy, right? Wow. Yeah. So just to put things in context, everybody says, look, e-commerce exploding, right? It's still about 10, 11% of commerce. Okay. So, I think, like the North Star here is, so if I take an arc, I think there's a narrative out there that AI is going to take over and take all our jobs. I think we're at kind of peak big data. There's so many analytics now. There's so much data now being generated that, businesses don't know what to do with it, right? So I think, and they don't know how to understand it. And they might, they're all kind of, long, heavy investments into data visualization tools and, BI tools. But I don't know if they can still kind of connect with the data, right? So, and sometimes I say, I guess we're almost like the last mile of understanding, right? So if you're a CEO in any business, especially bigger businesses, right? You've got these leadership team around you, and then they've got their own teams, and you're completely abstracted from the customer, right? So you're abstracted from the human being, and your data comes through a supply chain of hierarchies, and it's just hard for you to connect with it, right? So I think and if you look at the Indeemo logo, what we have is we've got 2 dots on either end of the word Indeemo, and there's a gap punching through. So like the mission of Indeemo is to punch through all the layers that separate the provider of the service to the consumer of the service. Okay, so we're just literally trying to cut through all this anonymous layers of big data that obfuscate human understanding, right? So if I was trying to say what does it look like in 20 years, I think we're trying to, we're on a quest to help businesses understand contextual emotion at scale, right? Okay, so we do studies at the moment, 20 respondents, 150 respondents, whatever, right? But like I'm thinking, like, what if we had 1,000 respondents always on in a rolling ethnography project where they're just constantly sharing life and video, and we're able to basically surface signals to researchers to kind of point them in direction of trends, right? So really we're trying to enable better understanding at scale. And what we're absolutely sure about is kind of concept of, we say it's a kind of human technology. So it will always take a human to understand the human. Like, I don't care who you are and what your AI soapbox is, but you like, when AI understands nuance and the nuance of context, we're all doomed. I don't think it ever will. So really we're trying to empower researchers to, efficiently understand what the humans who buy their products or services actually really need and feel. Bit of a wishy-washy answer, but it's I guess it's bringing emotion and proof into the decision-making processes of every business, so that the decision maker can connect with kind of video proof of contextual behavior and basically make better informed decisions on products or services or whatever they do.
Is there anything you'd like to do which technology does not let you do at the moment?
I don't think so. I think because it's evolving so rapidly, it's crazy, right? So I think and look, there's Silicon Valley narrative is they're trying to build technology for 10 years time, right? So there's a whole cohort of people out there trying to imagine the future and solve for it ahead of time. We're just focused on making our own customers' lives easier right now, right? So it's jobs to be done, right? So if you're a UX researcher, how do we make it easier to capture the data? How do we get respondents into projects frictionlessly? How do we capture better contextual behavior in video? How do we understand interactions? So a lot of our lens is very kind of short-term focused on the needs of researchers and designers right now. And I think for solving for that, I think there's a lot of progress to be made there, by the way. I think it's very hard to do good research at scale. I think we've more than enough to do on that. So my roadmap is very much focused on the pain of the moment versus the possibility of the future. But I'm sure we'll see some interesting eurekas as time goes by.
And then, so it sounds like it's more about the extra depth more than extra bells and whistles, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's about it's kind of just to kind of get me video behavioral proof now rapidly so I can make better decisions. So I won't say it's quite simplistic, but it's not more bells and whistles. It's efficiency simplified, right? So how can we make it frictionless for a busy researcher to understand the people they need to understand better, make sense of that data quickly, engage them privately, and then basically report kind of multimedia stories back to stakeholders so they can make decisions more rapidly.
And simplicity is always a great thing in any interface, simplicity all the time. Well, not all the time. Sometimes you need complexity. So thinking about the journey you've been on within Indeemo, it sounds like you've got a really comprehensive, awesome package here. What have been the hardest lessons to learn along that journey?
That's a great question, right? I think, so it's from my own perspective, actually, I think the challenging part of this is, so look, I think we're way post product market fit, right? The product is great. And, we have, we've got this philosophy at Indeemo that we want you to feel like you're staying at a hotel in the cloud rather than using a piece of software, right? So I think we're absolutely over-invested in creating great support for our customers, right? I think the lessons, the challenge of doing what it's doing when you're building a company like this is to try and, you're doing a million things at the same time. So it's trying to get the right people in the room. So it's solving the problem is quite rational. Everybody knows the roadmap, right? So like we need to do X, Y, Z and do it really, really quickly. That's quite linear and rational. I think it's the emotional human element of it is really strong. So hiring the right people, getting them focused, getting them coordinated, making sure that they're pointed in the right direction personally and there's alignment with the company and creating great culture. And so it's just a very complex thing. I think the challenge now has gone from almost building a product to building a company. And it's a fascinating thing, right? So I think, I don't know if that's the right answer. The lesson learned is just listen to the customer, actually, and understand that customer. And I think everything else takes care of itself and always go the extra mile.
So how important has your background in business and product management been in that building a company journey?
I guess it's... I haven't really thought about it, actually. I guess I'm kind of making it up as we go, Chris, to be honest. So, there's no playbook for innovation, right? So, if you're, I keep telling my colleagues, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable here, because if you're really innovating and you're kind of pushing the envelope, then you're kind of learning on the fly. Let me answer it this way, right? So when I'm hiring people, I say, look, really what I'm looking for is resourceful carers, people who care about what they do, and are very resourceful. And I don't think it's about experience anymore, insofar as experience is knowing answers or having a playbook. I think it's about being resourceful, find the answers for the problem you're trying to solve right now. So it's the ability to ask the right question at the right time rather than having some scripted answer based on the experience of the past. So I think it's taught me to be resourceful, I guess, actually is probably the answer.
Excellent. Now, because we're getting to the end of the interview, I should probably come clean that we are really excited at Loughborough University to be offering Indeemo to all of our master's students doing user experience design. So it's not so much of a plug, but we've been playing around with it and we've seen the value that, especially in the COVID restrictions, we're coming at the other end now, but how do you research people when you can't go meet them? Now, last year, our playbook of how to do research pretty much burnt up and we were innovating.
Really?
So this year, being able to offer Indeemo is going to be such an exciting way forward for us. And hopefully we're going to see that it could change the way that we're doing our professional work. It's going to be an exciting journey forward. So we've talked a lot about the company, talked about your background experience. If anyone listening wants to investigate Indeemo and find out more if it's a good fit for what they're working on, Eugene, how can they get in contact with you and find out more?
Yeah, awesome, Chris. So you go to the website, indeemo.com, INDEEMO, and you just ping us a contact form and we'll get in touch. Look, really excited to be partnering with Loughborough, right? So, and I think, and to the students out there who are using this, just don't be afraid to spam us and give us feedback on the product, right? So I think it's really, really interesting because I think education is going through a massive evolution right now as well. So look, just delighted to be partnering and supporting your course, and we're learning from you guys as well.
Excellent. It reminds me of anyone listening to the podcast might not have made this simile before. Is when you look at a surgery, compare it from 1,000 years ago to today. It's night and day. You can't recognise the surgery from 1,000 years ago to today. But go to a classroom, it's the same bloody thing. Go to Oxford Castle in Oxford. And they take you down to dungeons and they say, this is where Oxford University started. This is where they teach. Person will stand over there in this little pulpit, please. You sit on these benches here and you're off. That's a lecture. It hasn't changed. And what we need definitely in academia is a revolution of doing things differently and teaching differently. Design has a really similar approach. Now you think about, where does modern design start? It's the Bauhaus in Germany. That's the grail of modern design, and they learned about woodwork and pieces. Fast forward to the 80s, 90s, we had people like Don Norman and Jacob Nielsen talk about understanding people, understanding users. And here's the next evolution, user research. So we know about making great stuff. Here's where we understand great people, combine the two together, and design. Well, hey, since then, hasn't much changed. Like the diary study I talked about at the start of printing things out and giving it to people, and portable cameras. That was the same in the 80s as it was when I did my PhD, and it is today. So I think any technology that comes along, giving that extra depth, it's kind of what the industry needs. A lot more companies like Indeemo shaking things up.
Wow. That's all. Yeah, and I think it's, I've got 4 kids learning from home. They're going back to school next week, but it's been fascinating to watch it. Like it, there's a Chinese word for crisis, right? I hope I'm pronouncing it okay. It's a wei qi, right? Or I apologize for the wrong pronunciation, but it's 2 characters. The first one's in danger, and the second one's opportunity. And I remember last year, just to start COVID, sat my employees down on March 12th, said, guys, and I'd literally put that up actually in the week before. I said, there's danger, but there's also opportunity. So I think we're forced to get out of old habits now as a result of COVID. I think, we'll swing back to the best stuff and we leave the bad stuff behind. So I don't think everything's changed, but I think when we go back, I think we're going to cherry pick the stuff that we always wanted to improve or the stuff we always wanted to let go of. And it's kind of going to move us on, right? So it's just a fascinating time in UX. I think for UX research and service design experience and everything that's going on, like it's just you guys are in the epicenter of innovation, and I think the whole world is yearning for your skill set. And actually, just to finish kind of on a high note, like one of the things we say here is, look, we believe that great things happen when people really understand each other. And I think in every dimension now, the world needs a little bit more understanding. It needs people to listen and understand the context of everything that's going on. So, I feel it's really a good time for us now to be able to give researchers a tool to kind of properly understand the people they need to understand.
Excellent. So Eugene, it's been fantastic talking to you about your experience and your views and things. I want to end by asking you what you feel would make the world a better place.
I think if people started listening to each other and understanding context, I literally do. I think we're in an echo chamber where everybody's broadcasting and nobody's listening. So I think, that ability to cut through and see the reality of another human being and put their reality in context is critical, actually. So a little bit more understanding, I think, Chris, that's what the world needs right now, right?
That's excellent. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you very much.